Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie Oakman, and I'm the head of client success at PowderKeg. I'm super excited to be here today with Brad and Mitch to talk about how to master growth marketing as part of PowderKeg Unvalley. I am the marketer that prints out things that I like to say. Old school over here. So during the session, I'll ask them some questions. We'll learn more about what Brad and Mitch are working on. I've known Mitch for probably 3 years, maybe longer. The pandemic has kind of messed up my my time frame. We're going to be taking Q&A. So there should be on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a little box for chat and a little box for Q&A. So just toggle over the Q&A. I'm watching those questions. So if you got any questions that pop up, I know that there's a lot of really good questions surrounding growth marketing because it's kind of a buzzwordy and newer thing. So feel free to just drop those in there, and we'll make sure that we get to them throughout the session. Don't wait until the end. We're going to take questions throughout. So I'm just going to start out and introduce our panelists. So Mitch Causey is CEO of Demandwell. He's got over a decade of SEO experience and SaaS marketing experience. Has worked with awesome companies like Lessonly, and now has his own company at Demandwell. So Mitch, welcome.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks for having me.
For sure. And then Brad is the content marketing director at Terminus. He joined Terminus through the acquisition of Sigster, where he started with the founding team as the first marketer and helped to build a category-leading brand at Sigster. Brad's Sigster and Terminus content has gained a ton of recognition in the last couple of years, winning things like Best Customer Lifecycle Campaign, B2B Choice Award for Content of the Year at Killer Content Awards, and he's got a lot to share with our panel today. So Brad, thanks for joining.
Yes, thank you so much, Meg. You mentioned you've known Mitch for 3 years. I was counting in my head when you said that. Mitch, I think we're up to 9 or 10 years now, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Mitch has been growing out his beard since then. I started last year, so I'm trying to catch up. But happy to be here, Meg. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brad. So I want to just zoom out, way out at the beginning. So what is growth marketing?
What do you think, Mitch? Do you want to take that one?
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. So growth marketing. I actually love the title of this track of how to master growth marketing. I think that's a good point to like contrast where, there was a wave, I don't know, in the last decade or so about this like growth hacking mentality. And, if you hack anything, it's a very short term, really kind of small mindset in my opinion, and so I love that the title is how to master growth marketing, because if you're going to master anything, it takes time and patience and iteration and all that. And so I think that's just a really good kind of tag along word to growth marketing. But I think for me, growth marketing is all about creating sustainable, repeatable growth that is just up and to the right. And, frankly, I like for my marketing, if I'm running it, to be really boring. One of those things where I actually had the experience with Brad of doing this, where we'd meet once a week for a while, and it was just like, okay, I guess we have another record week. Kind of boring at this point. So yeah. Anyway, that's my take.
I agree, Mitch. I'm all about the boring levers of growth marketing. With what may be the plumbing or behind the scenes turns out to be your most reliable and sustainable channels, which I'm sure we'll get into a little more here.
Yeah,
for sure. I love the notes that you had on boring. Mitch, one of my favorite quotes from you over the years has been, "Content should be boring." The creating of.
Yes.
I love it. So one question that we always ask is kind of why now? So why is now such a hot moment for growth marketing?
Yeah, I can start there again as well. I think now has always been the right time for growth marketing. We're in a phase of, I don't know, the world where, we've got so many wild things happening across the world, from environment to politics to, of course, health, all of that. But I think, tech, especially like tech businesses, have just really proven to be so resilient during all this change these last year in particular, and last few years, that I think it's just it's the resilient folks, the folks that do have that patience and that long-term mentality, that they're not just trying to hack it. They are trying to think about, how are we going to do this that lasts, how are we going to create marketing that lasts through pandemics? How are we going to create marketing that lasts through all this change going on in the world? And I think now we all have more, kind of ammo to know what works, what doesn't in that area, and to know that, stuff like that does happen, and we have to have that longer term mindset, specifically now. And I think I think because of all those changes, there's just so much opportunity right now. There's so much capital that would typically be used or expended in certain ways that weren't. And so now, hopefully, a lot of folks on the call are finding that they have more budget than they may have before. So I think with more reason than ever before, I think now is a really good time for this long-term growth marketing mindset.
Yeah, I would agree. I would only add that marketers have never been closer to owning a revenue number, or co-owning or sharing, than they are now, which is great, which is how it should be. With that comes pressure to perform. And so we are being more careful, more targeted, more thoughtful about which channels we use and levers to pull for our growth marketing strategy to fuel that revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, what was your experience cracking growth at Sigster, and how are you contributing to that now post-acquisition?
Yeah, post-acquisition. It's so fun to look back on. We had a wild ride in the Sigster days. So to back up, I joined Sigster, was first a customer, and then joined the founding team as marketer number 1 back in 2015. Rode that out all the way till 2019, when we were acquired by Terminus, which is where I am now. So I'll first start with the Sigster days and talk about our journey there. And when I think about early on, it was, being scrappy startup, as I'm sure many, in the crowd today could relate to. It's let's get to work. And we were pumping out brand content. And what I mean by brand content, an ebook a quarter, 2 case studies a quarter, 3 blog posts a week. That little machine that you try to build. And so we had that going. We had our outbound and sales machine going. We were literally building a category and building a brand that was relatable and fun. We were at the top of the review sites, and I thought we were at the point where we had mastered growth marketing. And then I would open up Google Analytics and see this crazy roller coaster ride of peaks and valleys, and not really a sustainable up and to the right growth. And so, at that point, like you mentioned, we were literally winning content awards, but I was still frustrated with how we were growing. And so I think there's a point here of, you may have thought you've mastered growth marketing, and maybe you've mastered 3 out of the 4 channels you need, or 4 out of the 5, or whatever the number is. We were in that situation. And I remember looking at our search content, or search traffic, that was kind of dwindling down at that moment, and kind of just hit my breaking point. Started talking to Mitch and his team of like, all right, we invested heavily in brand and brand content early on. How can we level up with the technical side in the search channel and get that going? So fast forward to 2019, we did, and I would say like 9 to 12 months time span, not only leveled up, but that emerged as our number 1 channel for not only traffic, but inbound conversions as well. So had we not built the brand foundation, I'm not sure if that last growth lever would have worked as well. But that's the moment where I was super proud and thought we reached okay, we kind of have mastered this little thing that we have going, thanks to, adding our search channel at the end. And then we were acquired, and we got to start all over with a new domain and a new brand. So I started working with Mitch again, and we inherited a situation to where we had gobs of content, and we knew how to explain account-based marketing, which is the category we're in now, and what to do, but it just sat there on the shelf on our resource hub and collected dust. So my new mission was to create a channel, put that to work. And again, that was search. I know I'm biased in this channel. As I explain this, it could be any channel for you. For us, it was that with 2 brands, with 2 different domains. And in just like the 6 days in Terminus, in 6 to 9 months this time, it emerged as our #1 channel in terms of traffic and inbound conversions. So to take away, takeaways shared with both of those stories. You may have thought you figured it out, but constantly be trying new channels, because if you master that next new channel, it could bring everything else up and make everything else better.
Yeah, I love it. And there's some, just like what you were saying, there are some marketing activities that fuel those huge spikes of growth that you look into Google Analytics and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this roller coaster? And others are more long-term, sustainable activities that just build and build and build over time. I'd be curious to hear both of your perspectives on this. Can you talk about that trade-off or that like interplay between those 2 different kinds of growth?
Yeah, I love this topic. Mitch, I'm going to jump in for you and
do
go.
it.
Okay.
Do it.
So I love kind of this like analogy of peaks and valleys, and whether you're looking at Google Analytics or whatever you use to measure success, there are peaks and valleys in every marketing program. Your peaks being that new PR launch, the new website, the new video. Those are great and those are needed. Can you rely on those for sustainable growth? That is pretty hard to do, and the pressure only builds when you do try to do that. So going back to boring marketing, you need the boring channels or whatever you want to call it to drive that steady up into the right growth. For us at Terminus, it is search. Because we've invested so many hours, blood, sweat, and tears into that channel, and it's working well for us, we can afford opportunities to take big swings on those spikes. Literally this year, we're doing an event that's called Break Shit with a Sasquatch playing a saxophone. We're creating a board game, a card game, and we're making a video game. You can't do all of those things and take those big risks without a foundation in place. If you want to call it boring, sure. I think it's the most exciting channel, but you have to have your sustainable avenues or channels in place in order to make those big brand splashes. And then when that does happen, I think you see a cool way of them working together. So if you make a big splash with a new ebook that you paid a lot of money for, let's put it to work in the search channel, and they just feed off of each other.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think the only thing I'll add is, thinking about just like a graph. I think we're probably all have a graph in our mind of the peaks and the valleys, and like you said, Brad, the sustainable growth. I think one way that I think about it is if you have enough peaks and valleys through a year, to achieve your goals and stuff, that is awesome. But it just makes it so much easier when the valleys are up and to the right. So it's like when you have a spike and then you land back at 0, are you truly landing at 0, or has your valley now grown to 10, and then you have another spike and now you're coming back down to 20 or whatever it is. And I think that that's how I think about, being able to, like you mentioned, Brad, like, doing all those super fun things. You can do it because that when you are on the other side of that spike, you're gonna still be, your valley is still gonna be high enough that you're gonna reach your goals, whether that spike even happens or not. You could probably get away with, 3 or 4 out of a year's worth of those, extra fun things just totally failing because that the valleys are always growing.
Yep. So true.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Going back again to the boring foundational marketing and leaning into those I love that you say it like that. Mitch, I would love to hear kind of some of your experience cracking growth, thinking back to your days at Lessonly. Tell us what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very difficult. And like from the outside looking in, you know, it's the same with Sixter, right? Like from day one, I was at the Sixter launch party, you know, and like even that was like, oh my gosh, they're crushing it, you know. But I know behind the scenes, it was just so much, you know, so much hard work. And you know, so I was the third employee at Lessonly, and you know, that first year, whereas I was the only marketer, I just describe as this like scraping, scratching, clawing to find success kind of a thing. And then, you know, started to find some things that worked and did a bit more of those and a bit less of the things that didn't, you know, that kind of thing. And so I think, Brad, to your point earlier, you said, you know, search might be the right thing for you. There might be other channels. And I absolutely believe in that so much that like I believe there should be this iterative approach, especially in like very early stage of understanding, you know, that you have to try all the things and see what works and what doesn't. Through the years, what we then, you know, we kind of broke it out by that same concept, but by channel. So we got to the point where we were doing all the channels, and we knew that all the channels were working to some degree, but we'd go, you know, channel by channel by channel and kind of reset and rethink into that same concept of, okay, what can we, you know, intuitively test within this area? You know, we might have 10 tests in a quarter or something like that for a given channel, and then see which ones work. Do more of those, do less of the others. And so that iterative approach of just, you know, having a game plan, going out and executing that plan, then evaluating that and cycling that back into the next plan, that's the key to the success, you know, from my perspective of Lessonly's marketing. It was so much less about, you know, the idea of having a llama as a mascot, which, you know, we were literally talking about when it was just 4 of us. You know, it's not just about that. And then you have that idea and then things just work. It's a lot of hard work and perseverance and, you know, courage to keep going and sticking with itness. That, you know, that's why Lessonly shook out and is shaking out how they are.
Yeah, Mitch, great point about trying as many channels as you can. I don't think growth marketing means one channel. It's the right combination of channels. And you will fail with certain channels. We all have. It's just important to notice the failure and adapt quickly. But it's the right mix. It's those complementing each other, working for each other. And I know we've all heard it. Brand drives demand, but I don't know if those channels work as well if you don't invest in a brand to bring that all together. That combination kind of hit for us around 2019 in Sixter, the Sixter days, and you kind of just know it. And then hopefully we're starting to see it again for Terminus too.
What are some of those other channels? And I'd be curious to hear too, you know, we've talked about some channels are great and they work super well, or you grind away at them and eventually they start building and building and building. And then others are like, oh, that was a terrible idea. Let's do that one. I'd love to hear what channels are working, what channels were driving revenue for you as you scaled the business. And then what was like one example of one experiment that went awry?
Yeah, I love that question. Of course, I'll say search first and foremost. In both situations, what was once sort of an eyesore or forgotten channel quickly became our biggest asset. So it's never too late to invest in that channel or any channel. But going back to boring marketing, email marketing still works. We still have our email list, and we're in a consistent schedule, not a spammy schedule, but always try to be informative and share resources that way and grow our subscriber base. Another type of email marketing, of course, I'm going to say email signature marketing still works. Put those banners in those email sigs. Display advertising has been successful for us, but not just like a spray and pray, being super thoughtful and targeted and efficient about it. And then once you get them on your website, you better have some thoughtful chat track to get them to the next stage. So those are kind of our top 4 or 5, however many I mentioned there. And they all tie together well, and we invest heavily in brand with the fun projects. So those all work even better. And I need a second to think about an experiment, so I'll throw it over to Mitch.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm obviously huge fan of organic search, of course. Paid search, it's the same search box, right? Your audience is typing in the same search box for both of those to meet the needs that they have. So I think that's a no-brainer to have at least something going on. Another big one that I think can go overlooked or underutilized is what I call directories or review sites, that kind of a thing. So like the G2s, Capteras of the world, those I at times have found incredibly successful and in various industries. But that's actually one kind of experiment, if you call it an experiment, that I found, during at different times at Lessonly, we would be investing different amounts of money, and at different times in different like categories within that. And it was just wild to me that channel was actually like our second behind organic search channel for a really long time. And then and we kind of put it on autopilot and just let it run and expected it to be exactly the same forever. Well, the effectiveness of it actually started to decay over time and drop and drop and drop. And so then when we finally looked back at it, we were like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? This is our best channel. And we figured out some things and made some tweaks and got it up again. But I do think timing and, again, sticking with itness, I know it's not a word, but timing is huge too, where you might try paid search this month and crush it and do absolutely terrible. But if doing the same thing a year from now, back to your timing question, I think time actually plays a larger role than we often think that it does with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I love that, Mitch. I to be continued with these channels and stories, but we're testing Hulu ads, and we just bought some billboard space in San Francisco. So be creative, even if it's an older channel. If you don't see many B2B brands doing it, try it, test it out. Even if it's not as measurable as other channels, at least try it.
I love it. I love that. We've got 5 more minutes, and I've just got 2 or 3 more questions that I want to try and get through. So how do you consider, we just talked about all sorts of different channels. How do all of those work together? How do you consider all of those channels working together to fuel your growth engine, really?
I'll throw out 2 quick things given the time. One is, I think, the peaks and valleys with there are certain channels that are peaks and valley channels. There are certain channels that are compounding ones being organic search and direct traffic, which obviously you can't impact quite as much. But if those 2 are growing and you're adding the spikes on top of it, I think that is absolutely a great place to be. To Michael's question in the chat, that is actually a really key part of how I would typically answer that question, which is about customer acquisition costs. If you have so much going for you on the organic front, that is going to be like a between 10 and 30 to more X return on that investment, especially if you look at it over the long term. But it's because of that sometimes you can afford those tests, that you can afford a really high acquisition cost that you wouldn't be able to afford every customer acquired, but because the bottom line average of the acquisition cost compared to value is within range, then that's a really really great position to be. So you don't have to have every single dollar count at the exact same rate that every other dollar counts.
Yeah, for sure. Brad, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I'll just quickly add, I think the best channels are the ones you can use to make others better and inform decisions about messaging or strategy. With search, it's dictating our messaging in terms of like search volume. It's helping our paid channels. It's making every other channel better.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Last couple questions. Mitch, really curious to hear what kinds of lessons that you're bringing with you into your strategy at Demandwell. Yeah,
absolutely. So that whole concept of iteration is just so critical, and that's really a big baseline element for how we operate. We've kind of codified that specifically for our customers into what we call PACE. And so I know you both have heard me say that way too many times in the past, but for those who are listening and watching that haven't heard me talk about it, I'll just say it really quickly, that and this is how we think at Demandwell with everything that we do. So you need to have PACE stands for plan, attract, convert, and evaluate. And so we believe that every successful organic search program has a plan of how you're going to attract and convert attention. Then actually, you then have to go out and actually attract that attention. You have to do the work to do that. Once you have that attention, then you need to convert that attention and have them do what you want them to do. Once that happens, evaluate how you attracted and converted, and then cycle that back into the next plan and do that over and over and over and over again. And the faster and more frequently you do that, the more successful you'll be. So it was, I learned that very viscerally at Lessonly from like every channel perspective. But then once, starting at Demandwell, really codified that for search specifically.
Awesome. I love it. Last question. If you want, what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if this is for both of us or not, but I'll share. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say, you can check out demandwell.com, fill out our demo request form like we all have. You'll definitely get in touch that way. And then I'm not sure, for sharing emails in some formal capacity, but I'll just throw it out there. Mine's Mitch at demandwell.com. If you want to connect individually, absolutely happy to.
Yep. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, terminus.com. Be sure to check out the new demandwell.com, though. The new branding is awesome.
Awesome. Really, really appreciate both of you guys joining me for the panel. And I think that's it for today. I always learn a lot when I talk to either of you. And I learn a lot about growth marketing, about search. And I know that my team does too. So really appreciate both of you taking the time. Just want to say that there's a lot of other panels that are going on today, but also tomorrow. So we've got a whole slate of programming at Unvalley tomorrow in all three tracks: sales, marketing, product technology, and HR and leadership. So don't go anywhere. We have another session coming on. I think we have a keynote next. So make sure to head over to that stage and catch that conversation. And yeah, thank you, Mitch and Brad.
Thanks, Meg.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mitch.
Yep. Thanks, guys.